Dear students, today we are going to discuss the first part of the topic French Revolution. French Revolution was started on the 14th July 1789 and continued till the death of Maximilien Robespierre. In these 5 years, this revolution had taken several turns from bloody revolution to ideological revolution. It is not the first or the last revolution. It produced an immense effect or immense changes or a change of great magnitude in political sphere as the industrial revolution has produced great changes in economic sphere. On the morning of 14th July 1789, the city of Paris was in state of alarm. Nearly 77,000 people gathered in front of town hall and formed the people militia and broke into the government building in search of arms. Nearly 100 people marched towards the eastern part of the city and attacked the fortress prison Bastille. In the armed fight, the commander of Bastille was killed and all the seven prisoners were released. Bastille was hated by the people because it stood for the despotic power of the king. The fortress was destroyed and its fragments were sold in the market to keep as a souvenir of its destruction. The day that followed saw more of such rioting in Paris as well as all over the France. King Louis XVI was an autocratic ruler. The Great French Revolution of 1789 was a natural reaction of entire nation against this autocratic rule of Bourbon King Louis XVI and the resultant destructive poverty. The accumulation of political, economic, social, and intellectual factors made the explosion of this revolution inevitable. Autocracy was general form of government in France. Louis XVI believed in the theory of divine right of kings and regarded himself as representative of God on the earth. The administrative system was complicated, anarchic, unscientific, and corrupt. There was no representative body in the country, and the judicial system was unsatisfactory. There was four different legal systems functioning in the whole of France, while German law was prevalent in some part of country. Other part were governed by Roman laws. Mass, masses did not enjoy individual freedom. They could be sent to jail without trial. Even the military organization was defective and the system of taxation was not impartial. The king lived with great pomp and show in the magnificent royal palace in Versailles, a suburb of capital city of Paris. He was under the influence of his beautiful wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, who would interfere unjustly in the administrative matter. The inefficiency of the king Louis XVI and the disorderliness in the royal court made the condition very complex. The root of French Revolution in 1774, Louis XVI of Bourbon family became the king of France. He was then only 20 years and married to Austrian Princess Marie Antoinette. He found the treasury empty and expense of maintaining the court as well as palace of Versailles was too much. Under Louis XVI, France also helped 13 American colonies to gain independence from a common enemy, Britain. The war added a billion livres of debt, and now the total debt that they had were more than 2 billion livres. Now the lenders have also started charging 10% interest on that money. Therefore, to meet its regular expenses of running the court, maintaining the army, and running government offices and universities, the king had to increase the taxes that made people annoyed because they were already suffering in the numerous other way. As like other European countries, the French society was also based on feudal system. The society was divided into three states. The first state belongs to clergy, the second nobility, and the third state common people. 90% of the people of France belonging to the third state. Only the third state had to pay taxes. That was yet another annoying cause for common people to revolt against the government. The society was divided into privileged and non privileged classes. The privileged people had many privileges in political, social, and economic fields. About 90% of the land and the state was under their control. They did not pay any taxes, and all high posts were reserved for them. The unprivileged class had to work very hard in order to earn a square meal, and they had to bear the intolerable burden of taxes. Discontentment among the masses were constantly on the rise as a result to these social inequality. These three states is a symbol of inequality and division of people on the basis of privileged and non-privileged classes. The first state, which belongs to clergy, their population is around 1,30,000 people. They are mainly divided into high rank clergies and poor clergies. They enjoy privileges like collecting taxes called tithe. They employ censorship to the press, control of education, keep record of birth, death, marriages. Catholic faith held honored position of being the state religion, and they also own a large tract of land. They were exempted from paying any taxes, and they were subjected only to the church law rather than the civil law. There was no burden, only they have moral obligation rather than legal obligation to assist the poor and the needy and to support the monarchy and old regime. The second state, which belongs to the noble, their population was nearly about 1,10,000 of people. They also enjoy certain privileges like they collect taxes in form of feudal dues, monopolize military and state appointments, and also have a large tract of land. They were exempted from paying any taxes to the state. They were burdened to support the monarchy and old regime. The third state, which belongs to the common people, their population is around 2.5 crores. Everyone other than nobles and clergy included in it, the bourgeois, the city workers, merchants, peasants, along with many other poor priests were included in it. They don't enjoy any kind of privileges or neither they were exempted from paying any taxes. They were burdened to pay all the taxes to the state, church, and the manors or pay manorial dues. They pay tithe to church, octroi tax on the goods brought into the cities, corvée forced road work, capitation poll tax, vingtieri income tax, gobel soil tax, tallies to the king as a land tax, feudal dues for use of local manors, wine press, oven, etc. That means the third state almost paying 85% of its production. So it's become very difficult for the third state to maintain a proper livelihood for themselves. In this condition, the population of France rose from 23 million in 1715 to 28 million in 1789. Due to that rapid increase in the population causes increase in demand of food grains, resulting in high price of bread, which was a staple diet of majority. The rapid rise in the food prices do not maintain the balance with the wages of the worker, which were not increased by their master. Things become worse when France was hit by drought or hail. This led to subsistence crisis. Subsistence crisis is an extreme condition when the basic means of livelihood are endangered. Apart from this, there are several other long-term causes for French Revolution. As we already know that Louis XVI was an autocrat or despotic ruler. There was no restriction over his power. There was also a unjust socio-political system of old regime where the society was divided into three categories where two states enjoy privileges and the third, which has a very large number of followings, do not enjoy any privileges. The poor harvest, which left the peasant farmers with little money for the taxes. The system of mercantilism also restrict trade. That means the people can't adopt any trade of their wish. Influence of other successful revolution like the Glorious Revolution of England in 1688, in which John II was replaced by his daughter Mary and William of Orange, and also the American Revolution of 1775 to 1783, where the France and French government sent an army under Lafayette to help the 13 colonies to get independence from Britain. There was also influence of enlightened philosophers. By this time, an enlightened community of philosophers had come up in France. The philosophers and writers like Montesquieu, Rousseau, John Locke, Voltaire, Diderot propagated against the defective autocratic administration and privileges of noble and made the masses aware of their fundamental rights. Rousseau was the renowned philosopher of this time. His work, Social Contract, in which he explained that the will of the people is the guiding force for the rule or making any government. He declared that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chain. Apart from this, there are several other causes. which can be broadly termed as short-term causes. Among short-term causes, the major cause was the financial bankruptcy. This financial mismanagement or the weak economic condition had made the situation more explosive. The state treasury was empty. The national debt has increased so much that the half of the national income was used in paying the interest only. The system of taxation was highly unjust and impractical, and the system of collecting the revenue was expensive and corrupt. The economic inequality prevalent in France gave rise to saying in France, 9/10 of the population dies of hunger and 1/10 of indigestion. Keeping in this mind, the French minister Turgot Necker Colon proposed changes in the fiscal system of France. They suggested the king, Louis XVI, to either reduce the expenditure or broaden the tax. To reduce the expenditure, this was rejected by the Marie Antoinette. So only one option was left for the king, that to increase the taxes. But the Assembly of Nobles voted down the taxation for the nobility in 1787. There was also a great fear among the people that the terrible famine of 1788 pushed the country into the mouth of starvation. While on one hand the masses were dying like insects for the want of foodstuffs, the members of the royal family, nobles, and clergy were spending money extravagantly on leading a life of luxury. The hungry, impoverished peasant feared that noble at state general were seeking greater privileges, so they attacked noble occurred throughout the country in 1789. The first state and the second state who asked the king Louis XVI to call a state general if he want to impose a tax on first and second state, because the king do not have the power to impose tax on the first and second state. Louis XVI had no choice but to call for a meeting of a state general to find a solution to the bankruptcy problem. The state general was first time being created in 1302, and it had not met since 1614. To the date 1789, it's around 185 years the state general had not convened. So the calling of the state general set a motion a series of events which resulted in abolition of monarchy and completely a new social political system for France. The calling of state general had initiated a chain reaction. The meeting of State General was convened in May 5, 1789. The voting was conducted by 3 different states. Each state has one vote. First and second state could operate as a bloc to stop the third state from having its way. The representative of the third state demanded that the voting should be on the basis of their population. A deadlock was resulted, but the king had to relent. king accepted the demand of the third state. So the election for the state general was started. 300 representatives were elected from the first state, 300 from the second state, and 600 from the third state.